This is the McFarlane Toys movie Maniacs Series 6 Predator 2 City Hunter. For 2003, movie Maniacs Series 6 is based solely on the Alien and Predator film properties, offering fans various incarnations of the core characters. So how about the first thing that we do is grab the tape measure and figure out how tall City Hunter Predator stands. The answer to that is a very astonishing 8 inches in height. He doesn't get much in the way of accessories, but the first thing we'll have a look at is this very pathetic movie Maniacs display base. I say pathetic because by this point of the game, they've really skimped back with the display base options that you're getting with the movie Maniac figures. Gone are the days where you get a full frame, a fully enclosed display base. As it continues to go down the legacy of the lines, you get the base get shorter and shorter until eventually now we're stuck with this. Now this base, as impressive as it does look, and it still has the raised elevated movie Maniacs and some nice bone work there, it is rather pathetic with what little it can do to hold the poster in place. It's made up of 2 pieces, the back part that has the support struts, and of course the front plate. The poster is really just supposed to sit in between that, and you can sort of pinch it together to keep it in place, but it doesn't really keep the poster very well. I mean, the poster is still very loose, and unfortunately, even getting it out of packaging, look at the state of this poster. It's bent, it's warped, it's cardboard, so about that's on par with what you would expect. The poster, at the very least, has like a sheen to it, so it does look like it's been like almost laminated. On the top there, you got Silent, Invisible, and Invincible, the Predator 2. He's coming to a town with a few days to kill. Again, I wish that the cardboard was in a better state. I certainly wish, though, the display bases were better at supporting the posters. I mean, this is it's really sad. It's really, really sad. I'm going to move that out of the way because it's going to depress me if I look at it for the rest of this review. The other thing he comes included with is his disc. A very nice printed disc. It's got a very tarnished copper look to it. There's the back, there's the front, or vice versa. It doesn't really so much fit in his hand. He has 2 hands. One hand is specifically designed for the spear, which would then ergo make this the available hand for holding the disc. But the hands are so close together, rather the fingers are so close together, that it doesn't give you much in the way of space to fit the fingers in place. Ideally, the thumb is, I think, supposed to fit here or here, but either way, it just doesn't line up all that well at all. This will involve a whole lot more frustrating cursing the figure, so ultimately I'm just probably going to leave it off. It does, however, fit on the side as it normally would, but it doesn't sit well at all. This is extremely, I don't want to even say soft plastic, but it is considerably warped. So fitting in the disc on that, it does stay in place. But longevity for how long that's going to stay, I mean, I dare not say hold your breath. I guess you could hold your breath because that probably will fall off, and you're not going to have to get medical crew to revive you. The other thing that he does include is, of the more interesting things, he does come with his spear. Rather thick spear, but at the very least, it does have the retracting options. So like this comes out, and then the end points here, this one side should come out, there we go, and the other side does come out. It looks good being able to extend. The trade-off, unfortunately, is it does make for a very broad-looking spear, a very difficult-looking spear, and laughably, they give you this amount of clearance in the hand to fit the spear in place. The finger here is unfortunately molded to the thumb, so you can't even pry the fingers away from one another to fit this very thick spear in place. I guess the intent is more so to display the spear. Oh, this other part here comes out too. There we go, fully extended. Let's get this fully extended. I would not be doing it true justice if I didn't have it fully done. There we go. This should come out as, there we go. Perfect. All right. And there's the fully extended spear. So it's a lot longer than I initially alluded to. You can't even really, it could technically fit around this section, but there's no way it will fit around the broad nature of this, the center area of the spear. And if only his fingers were not molded, if this pointer finger wasn't attached to the thumb, at the very least I could pry this open and I could fit the spear through. How many times have I said spear in like the last 2 minutes or so? So anyways, disappointing that the spear and the disc don't properly hold in his hand. If you can get your spear and your disc into his hand, congratulations. That's fantastic news. Okay, so let's have a look at this figure. He's awkward, but to his credit, he has better articulation than NECA was releasing at the time that they were coming out with the Predator figures. Proportionally, he looks way off. His shoulders are extremely broad, his waist is extremely narrow, but the only thing that is properly proportioned are his legs. And yes, you did see that right. He does have hinges on his legs. Keeping in mind, this is from a movie Maniac release from McFarlane Toys, and yet ultimately, he does have articulation in the legs. That's something that NECA wasn't even doing back then. Let's have a look at his face, and then we'll talk about some rather awkward things. His face sculpt is pretty good. I have to admit though, City Hunter does have more brownish tones to it than the otherwise kind of lighter beiges that the Jungle Hunter has, but I have to admit that this figure does come across very muddy. Very muddy, very hard to kind of make out the details, especially when it comes to his face. His eyes are in there, but they're very difficult to see. The eyes are, I think, too small, and even then the pupils are tiny, tiny little pupils that they're almost hard to make out. In fact, I have a tough time even making them out. To the credit, though, they have given him a sheen to his face, which is something that is completely void on the rest of his body. Everything else on the rest of his body is more of a matte paint. His face is the only thing that actually gets a slick coat to it. No, the figure does not come with a helmet, unfortunately. He does come with his plasma caster, which it's in theory supposed to slide down. I think that is the intent. It's supposed to slide down here, but it's actually tabbed. Let me just show you. It's tabbed right there, which would make it impossible for it to slide down the groove. The groove is almost just like a show groove. It's not really supposed to do anything, so you can't move this down. You can swivel this down and bring it down like that. It does have a swivel hinge here, and then this section here does have some rotation, so you can rotate that around as well. But it does sit very loose. A lot of times it just kind of flops around. It's a very loose, right out of the package actually, it's very, very loose. As for the rest of his body, like I said, the biggest culprit to this figure is not necessarily its posability, because he actually has more posability than you would think that he has, but he just looks lanky. He looks sickly, he looks malnourished. This whole section here is way too thin. And like I said, he's got the problems of having really muddy paint application. There's different layers there, but ultimately they just sort of blend together, giving you just this very one consistent color. Even though technically there are multiple shades of color, from a distance, it definitely does just give you that sense that it's really bogged down with paint. I do like the little freckles and notations here, little details that they've added to the body. All the little freckles on here as well. And the armor does have a good little bit of additional brushing there of like a bluish tint. He does have a skirt, and of course moving further down, he's got his net accessory, but it doesn't remove. And it is actually slotted, like it almost should fit something, but ultimately it doesn't. It doesn't come out, you can't remove it. Doesn't look at the very least like you can remove it. And of course down to the Predator feet. To their credit, they've sculpted the undersides of the feet. They could have very well just left those completely flat. And he does have one peg hole on the underside of his feet. Okay, so talking about his posability is an asset and also a hindrance to this figure, because I think what ends up happening, he does have posability in his shoulders, but I don't know if you notice it, the shoulders look extremely off length. They're a lot wider than they really should be, And it almost seems as if his one arm is drooping and sliding down his torso. A lot of the culprit is actually the fact that they put a swivel hinge in the actual shoulder blade. So you could theoretically bring the arms forward, which is not something you would ever expect to see on a McFarlane release. This hinges forward and back, but the problem is it leaves not only a big gap right here, but it also makes the figure look very awkward, like somebody's drawn him off proportioned. You can sort of compensate, because really the shoulder should be closer to the torso. You can kind of compensate by bringing the shoulder forward, but it does make it look as if it's really broken. This shouldn't have been as long as it was. Probably half that length wouldn't have made this shoulder look as awkward as it does. Anyways, his poseability though, his head rotates back and forth, has a hinge up and down. It does look like he's got two hinges, but try as I might, I can't get underneath the collar here to see it. So he probably has a hinge, but then he's got a secondary ball joint. Surprising, I know, yes. Shoulder hinges move forward and back. Again, this one doesn't look as bad. This one does look like quite the eyesore, unfortunately. Not only do these swivel back and forth, but then you got the hinge back and forth on the arms, and then the arms themselves can also swivel hinge outward. Now think of the last time that you've ever seen a McFarlane movie Maniac figure actually be able to accomplish this feat. While all of that sounds great, and he has a swivel on the bicep on both sides, that sounds great on paper, but then he unfortunately forfeits it by not having articulation in, well, he has it in the knees, but he doesn't have it in the elbows. Of all the places that you would want articulation, he only relies solely on just a swivel hinge to be able to move his arm. And that's actually the case on both arms. He only has the straight swivel, and yet his knees ultimately can do a lot more than that. Strange. His hands, grab one of the hands here, his hands rotate all the way around, and it also does have a hinge back and forth. Not to mention as well, I have to bring that to your attention, he has a little computer console that's all ready to go, ready to detonate. And on this side, he does have the little gauntlet blades, which last time we had a look at this figure, at least the Jungle Hunter version, this little peg broke off. So I'm not actually pulling it from this. I find that's what's causing the problems, instead I'm actually just pulling it from the blade themselves. As for the rest of his body articulation, his waist rotates back and forth. He does also have an upper torso crunch, and he has a lower waist swivel. I can't stress this enough. This is all coming from a Movie Maniac release. No, it's not coming from NECA. Legs split outward, forward and back. He has a top swivel cut on the thigh, double hinge on the knee, and then he finally has articulation in the foot. No, he does not seem to have an ankle rocker. Sadly, not be the case. But you have to admit, that's a whole lot of poseability coming from the City Hunter. Some of it unfortunately translates to a rather awkward looking figure, not so much from the waist down, but from the waist up, it's really all over the place. If I could give a grade to the Movie Maniacs Series 6, Predator 2, City Hunter Predator, I would give him a B. I wanted to give him an A, but an A kind of signifies a perfect score, and he is far from being perfect. But I'll give him a B for effort, even though effort doesn't start with B. But I'll give him a B for effort because, at the very least, he was putting poseability on this particular figure, Todd McFarlane and his team, that is, in 2003. Now, keeping in mind, when NECA first got the licensing for the Predator figures, those figures still had swivel hinges in their legs. It was only later that they introduced fully posable figures that were doing something that McFarlane was doing so much longer ago. It's a really nice representation of the City Hunter. Unfortunately, though, as much as that articulation does benefit this particular figure as a surprise to the collector, it does also hinder the figure because it makes the figure look extremely awkward. The lower legs and from the waist down doesn't look so bad. It's really when you start looking at the torso and the awkward nature of his shoulders, oh boy, what's happening there, that you start seeing that all that posability does come with a price. McFarlane Toys was doing something very different, but ultimately it did translate to a figure that looks a little off, in all honesty. I like the fact that he does come with accessories. He comes with that spear and disc. Unfortunately, I had a tough time getting either into his hand. So while you may not get a perfect A, City Hunter, I'm going to give you a B. A B for effort. And effort, no, does not start with B. Today, though, we were having a look at the movie Maniacs Series 6. This was the City Hunter Predator from Predator 2, which also, I might add, this particular one here is the unmasked version. There was also a masked version as well, which I don't know if I actually reviewed on this channel. I'll have to double check. If I didn't, I'll see if I still have that one in my collection. If you guys haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. Many more videos will be coming your way. If you also haven't had a chance, head over to the main page. Go down to the section that says videos and see if there's anything that you may have missed along the way. I know a lot of people are promoting the bell ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, but what I'm promoting, though, is that bell notification may work 50% of the time, but 100% of the time, checking the videos on the home page will guarantee you that you'll be able to see anything that you may have missed along the way. More videos, guys, will be coming your way, so stay tuned for that. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.